All right, friends and fans, welcome back to Greg's Mobile Automotive AC Repair. I'm in the shop still, working on this 68 Ford F100, doing the rewiring job. And tonight I'm going to show you guys the harness that I chose, go over that real quickly, and then I'll talk about some stuff that I think you're going to want if you're going to jump into a project like this, some tooling and some supplies and stuff like that. So, all right, let's just get right into it, okay? Let me adjust the camera and we'll get started. All right, let's see. There we go. All right, so got this here in the frame. As you guys can see, this is a Painless automotive wiring harness. And the reason why I went with Painless is I've done some of the products, used some of their product before on a couple other jobs. I did a wiring harness for an engine, just the engine harness, and I did a tail light section using this product. And I really like the way they packaged everything. I like the stuff that they included with it as far as directions and things like that. I know there's a bunch of other companies out there that do this, and I'm sure they all do it well. This is just a brand that I'm familiar with, and so this is who I went with. So we'll just get right into the box. Before I get started though, this is the part number right here. Let me see if I can zoom you guys in on that. There you go. And really hope that's not going to be backwards in the video. So here we go. Part number is part number 10123. There's another part number here. I'm not sure what those two numbers for, but that's the part number that I ordered it under. It's customizable Ford chassis harness. Fits 1966 through 76, and it's 21 circuits. And I'll talk about that here in just a minute. I ordered this particular harness from a company called CJ Pony Parts online, and they have a bunch of stuff for just about any classic rebuild that you're going to do. They had a lot of stuff available. So anyways, I did price this harness through Painless Performance. They have their own website as well, and the prices were the same between both CJ Pony Parts and the Painless guys. So let me zoom you guys out on that a little bit. All right. So we'll get right into this. Full disclosure, I have been into this box already, so I kind of already looked at it. I wanted to get into the instructions and take a look at those because, you know I'm weird. I know, breaking the man code and all. I actually read instructions before I get into stuff. And so anyways, I've been in this already, so I kind of know what we're getting into. So anyways, you open up the box, and right on the top here, they have a little demo card for their stuff. It's called Power Braid, and it's a really good product as far as wire protection, things like that. You know, these little samples here, and they've got two different styles in here. They got the more like the old cloth style of insulation used to be on older wiring harnesses, and then they got a more modern kind of a plasticky stuff. But this stuff works really well at protecting your wires. It wraps around and encases the wires in this sheath here. And this stuff's a little better than some of the other stuff I'll talk about here in a minute. So that's right on top. And then there's this paper here. It says, before you begin, it says thank you. And then it says, first read the owner's manual for proper installation instructions. Read the manual. Seriously, I recommend you guys do that. But hey, you do you, boo. You do you. So here's the wiring instruction manual that they're referring to. This is really cool. It does have a lot of information as far as how to hook up certain circuits within the vehicle that you're working on. And this wiring manual is not a generic one that they just mass produce. It's for the vehicle, the series and year models that you're working on. So that's really helpful just to have that. Right into it, if you look off there on the little left-hand side of the box here, there is this container full of crimp connections and terminals and things like that. There's some small micro blade fuses in here. I'll talk about that here in just a moment. But this is all of your your bullet style connections, male and female, insulated, female spade connections. I'm looking to see if there's males there. Then there's some males. There's a couple of if you need to put two on one type of a deal, there's some insulated and uninsulated spade connectors and receivers. And then you've got some butt splice connections here for crimping. So yeah, pretty handy little kit that they include. Get into the wiring. They do have some of the wiring broke down into various circuits. This right here, this wiring kit is for the alternator regulator. I'll talk about that here in a minute. And then they also include a separate one for the alternator, for the power wire, and some other cable connections going to the alternator. This one comes with a boot and one of the connections already made. And then there's some ring terminals in there, crimp style ring terminals that you can add once you cut your wire to length. One of the things I want to talk about on this harness, and most of the harnesses that I've seen out there that are commercially available, you know, I had a friend of mine a while back that had gotten into one of these, and he was under the impression, and I gathered from reading some forums that some other people have been under the impression that when you order one of these harness kits, you get it, you know, you order it specifically for the vehicle you're working on, and people have had the impression that it's going to show up and all the connections are made and it's ready to go. You pull out all you gotta do is pull out the old harness, put this one in, and the connection's already there. And as you're about to see, that is not the truth. As the saying goes, some assembly required. So this is the entire harness. And as you can see, I hope the camera's picking this up, there are, just in this little section that I'm looking at right here, there are 4 wires sticking out that are not, you know, they don't have connections on them. They are just wire. I'm not going to unwrap this whole thing for you right now. I will do that in another video when I lay it out and kind of get an idea of what all this goes. But this is your harness right here in its entirety. Now there are a couple of connections that have been pre-made. I'd have to look to see what exactly these go to. But for the most part, you're going to make the connections. The reason why they do that is because, you know, they give you more than enough length of wire so that you can run the wire and route it where you want it to go. And then once you get it where it's at, then you can terminate it with the proper connection. You know, cut it to length and put the connections on. So they don't pre-connect it for you. So there's the main harness. This right here is the fuse block. It's not on camera. There we go. That right there, that's the fuse block. This was the cover that was on it. So there's a plastic cover, covers it up. And this right here, this will replace the glass fuse block that was in this vehicle originally. And I think there was only, if I remember right, I think there was 8 circuits on the original one. With this one, you've got 21, plus you've got a couple of relays. What's really good about this is, first of all, you know, you update to the more modern fuses. You have expandability as far as if you want to add a stereo, or if you say you put AC in this vehicle and you want to have fan control relays, you can do that now because you have this here. So that's really cool. I think that's a neat feature of this. But at the same time, other than the modernization of the fuse block here and new wiring, you know, you install this into your vehicle and this will bring your vehicle back to original configuration with a couple of minor tweaks, right? So that's the main harness itself plus the fuse block. Here's a mounting, little mounting base for that once you get it into the vehicle. And then here is a pack of, here's a couple of flasher modules. Here's your main fuse bus. Here's a couple of body grommets. Here is some zip ties. I don't know if I can show that up on small zip ties. Here are some lighting connections for headlights. And also I think there's 1 or 2 in here for tail lights. Just some stuff. There's another, looks like another alternator, plastic plug, things like that. So that's included as well. And then there's this tube of dielectric grease that's included in there. And this stuff's great. I wouldn't discourage you from using it. I'm not opposed to using it myself. I will say this though, use it sparingly when you put it on, because, you know, depending on where you're at in the world, I know that a lot of places, you know, in the Midwest and back east, where they have a lot of rain and moisture and humidity and stuff, they like to use this to keep connections, you know, from water getting into them, and relays and trays and stuff like that. Out here where we live at, and for those of you who don't know, you know, you're looking at me from somewhere else in this wonderful world. We live out here, it's a desert climate, and so in the summertime we can get temperatures, you know, above 100s and, you know, up into the 100 and 110, 111 range, and they'll stay that way, you know, consistently for a good number of days. And dielectric grease, any grease will break down over a period of time with temperature. And this stuff will break down, and if you've got it in a relay tray or whatever, I've actually had vehicles that have been in my shop that this could cause problems. And the reason why is because dielectric grease does not conduct electricity. It's an insulator. And that's the reason why a lot of people use it. But because it does not conduct electricity, if it happens to get on, you know, the coating, if it happens to get on the terminal and the connector in between there, you won't make a good connection. And it'll cause things not to work. It'll cause things to not work at proper voltage or amperage. And it can cause problems. It's good, just use it sparingly. That would be my only, I guess, warning or caveat on that. Good stuff though, and they include it in here, you know, as part of the kit. And then there's a decal in here as well that, you know, we'll be making it onto one of my toolboxes for sure. All right, so that's the kit in itself. Like I said, I think it's pretty inclusive for everything that comes with it. And this was just the kit. You can do some add-on options, both CJ Pony parts and Painless performance products, both offered more things on their websites, you know, things like insulation and stuff like that. But I'd already kind of had some stuff that I had already identified that I wanted for this project, and I'd already bought some stuff. So that's the harness in a nutshell. I will be doing another video, like I said, once I get ready to, I'm about ready to start putting this into the vehicle. I have some prep work that I have to do. Let me get this back up here so you guys see my beautiful face here. I still have some prep work. Whoa, there's a close-up for you. That I'm doing on this truck. Just some stuff that now that I got the harness and everything out of the way, some cleanup and some stuff like that that I want to do, you know, while I've got the harness out is the time to do it, right? But not much. And then I'm going to start putting the harness back in. So when I lay it out, which is I will do because I need to, you know, lay it out and get all my branches separated and get things, you know, set up to where they're going, and then I'm going to start installing this thing. When I do that, I'll make a video of that because I really want to show you guys. Just a second, let me show you this real quick. I know I've talked about this before on one of my earlier videos. I talked about this wiring diagram that I got from Faxon Auto Literature. And so the wiring colors that are on here that are talked about on here, there we go, make that a little better. The wiring colors that are talked about on here, you know, if it says it's a white wire with a red stripe and it goes to this, when you get into this wiring harness right here and you find that wire, it's going to be a white wire with a red stripe, and it's going to say it goes to that, you know, they're really spot on with matching the factory wiring harness in colors and where they were going. So that was one of the reasons why I recommended this product to the customer. One of the things I want to cover real quick before we get too far into this, you know, if you guys are gonna make comments down in the section, this isn't a resto mod, and this isn't a full-on restoration. This is a truck that the customer really loves. He's got an attachment to it because it was his dad's. His dad bought it brand new in '68, and he wants it to run. He wants to be able to drive it, and he wants to be able to, you know, have the headlights and horns and, you know, all the stuff that makes a vehicle work. He wants to have all that without a lot of hassle. And so, you know, we're not putting in an updated dash with all the coolest LED, you know, lights and LCD displays, and we're not doing that because that's not what the guy wants. The guy wants to drive the truck that his dad bought, and I totally support that. I get it. I get where he's going with that. Not that I'm opposed to doing upgraded stuff. You know, you guys that know me personally know I love technology and I love the newfangled stuff, but I'm really digging in this old school project here. I just, you guys, I know you can't see it on camera, but I'm really having a good time with this. So anyways, this is going to bring it back to reliability. You know, he's going to have a vehicle that he doesn't have to worry about the wiring in. He doesn't have to worry about whether or not the headlights are going to work when he turns on the switch and that kind of thing. That's the reason why we went to this. So that's this product itself. That's the harness. Now, I want to talk about some of the things that I think you're going to need tooling wise, and then also some supplies and stuff that aren't maybe necessary, but they're definitely going to make the job easier or more professional, and just make it, you know, easier to get the job done. So let me move this harness out of the way, and then I'll set up for this next shot here. Okay, so give me a second here. I'm going to adjust the camera again, and then I'm going to have a seat, make sure everything's all lined up. There you go, live video. How about that? All right, so I'm going to set this over here, and then, okay, so let me see here. Are we all good? Yeah, we're all good. All right, cool. All right, so yeah, we're going to get into this wiring harness pretty deep here in the next couple of videos. But before I do, I want to talk about some of this stuff, because I've had a couple of guys that have hit me up. I've got a couple of friends of mine and work acquaintances that are doing projects similar to this, or are getting ready to do a project, you know, almost identical to this. And so they've been asking me some questions and stuff, and I love it. That's you know, that's the reason why I'm doing these videos and stuff. You know, it's not that I don't have a beautiful face and it doesn't belong in TV, but I don't have a beautiful face and it really doesn't belong on TV. I'm doing these videos hopefully that it helps one of you guys out one of these days, right? So anyway, so I've had people have asked me, hey man, what about this? You know, and so here's some of the things that I think you're gonna want. I'm not opposed to crimp connections. I wanna say that right off the bat. I'm not opposed to it, but the majority of the connections that I do on this harness will most likely be soldered. And the reason why is, you know, I came up old school electronics background back in the, you know, early, like very late 80s and very early 90s. And so I was in the Army and was doing communications repair, stuff like that. And everything we did was solder. If you had to repair a cable or a wire, it was soldered. And so that's just what I learned. And so I'm comfortable with it. I've, you know, been doing it long enough that I'm confident in my abilities to do so. But I have to admit, in the last couple of years, there have been some really great tools that have come along for crimp connections. And I really have to admit, they do good. I own now a couple of them. I'll show you here. So by no means am I telling you, hey, if you can't solder, don't even do this. What I am telling you is if you can't solder and you want to crimp, don't use these things here to do your crimp connections with. Now let me clarify something here. If this is in your breakdown bag, you know what I mean? And if you drive a vehicle that's more than a few years old, you should have a breakdown bag, you know, basic tools and supplies and things like that. If you're carrying this in your breakdown bag with an assortment of, you know, butt splice connections and things like that, and you're using this to get yourself, you know, broke down on the 10-mile road down there and you're trying to get home, I get it. I'm totally with you. But for long-term permanent wiring repairs, these crimps, I've used these before and I've never ever been happy with and content with the crimps that they produce. Are they workable? Sure. I'm not saying they're not. They're just not my preference. And so don't use these to do long-term or you know, permanent wiring. Use something like this tool here that I'm fixing to show you. This is a smaller version of it, and this is a ratcheting crimp tool. And so I'll show you this one first. This was the first one I bought, and I bought it just to see whether or not I thought it was going to be a viable solution for doing some crimps. Because as much as I love soldering, there have been some jobs where I couldn't get in there with the soldering iron safely without causing damage to the customer's vehicle. About 4 or 5 months ago, I had a vehicle in here that I was replacing a fan, and I was replacing the resistor, and I needed to solder a connection for the fan. The new fan didn't come with the right connector, and I couldn't get in there. And I couldn't pull the whole, you know, I couldn't pull the whole dash harness out. So I used a ratcheting crimp connection with some heat shrink, and I was very happy with it. I'm satisfied that it was a good, solid connection. Would I have preferred to solder it? Yeah, every time. That's just my preference. But I am confident that these types of tools do provide a good, solid mechanical crimp. And if you follow it up with a good heat shrink and things like that, I see no reason why this cannot be a permanent solution to doing a wiring installation or repair. Okay, so this is the Klein Tools version of that, and the part number on that is 3005CR. And this one just comes with the red, blue, and yellow crimp dies built in. And so this is for insulated terminals. from gauges 22 to 16, 16 to 14, and 12 to 10. It does have adjustable tension on it so that you can control the amount of crimp you're putting into the connection. And I think that's really important when you get into some of these terminals that have the insulation plastic cover on it, you know, so that you don't mangle that. So this is a good tool. This is a set that I picked up here, and it's a ratcheting crimper, just like this, with the exception of this set here, you know, also has the red, yellow, blue, right? Ratcheting connection, adjustable tension right here, so you can control the amount of tension. What's good about this set, and the reason why I opted to buy this set and I use this set when I have to do crimps, this is my go-to set now, is this set comes with removable dies. And there's a set of dies here for whatever type of wiring you're working on, okay? So these connectors here with the red, yellow, blue, these are typically used on your butt slices and your ring terminals and your bullet style connectors with the appropriate coloring of red, yellow, blue. And the red, yellow, blue, for those of you who don't know, those indicate different gauges. They usually, you know, red will be associated with this gauge of wiring, blue with this gauge, and yellow with the other, right? So if I remember right, I think yellow is the largest, blue is the medium, and red's the smallest. I might have red and blue mixed up there, but you get the gist. So that's what these are for. Now what's nice about this is if you're working with real small wiring, like say stereo connections, you know, that have 9,000 tiny little wires and you need to make a connector, you can. This comes with, you know, terminal dies for insulated, non-insulated, small little fiber optics size wires, not fiber optics, you're not doing it to do that, but that size of wire, like you can crimp and do a good solid mechanical crimp. I've used this set, I have had it for a little while recently, had picked up the newer set, but I've used it on a couple of jobs and I've been very satisfied with it. You know, and it's real simple to replace the dies, put the new die sets in, and get set up. So I say that, there we go. And you're off to the races. The part number on this one, this is made by Astro Pneumatic, and the part number on that is 9477. Very good tool. I bought this one off of Amazon. Was not extremely expensive at all. I mean, it was reasonable. I thought it was reasonable. You know, if you're not going to be doing a bunch of wiring and stuff, maybe you don't need to buy this full-on set. I get it. This right here, I think I bought this at Home Depot and it was around 30 bucks. Even if you only do 2 or 3 wiring jobs, you know, on vehicles, this would be worth your time if you're going to crimp connections. All right, so that being said, there you go. If you are going to solder, and I'll talk about soldering real quick. I think anybody can learn how to solder and do it well. They just need to have the practice doing it. And you know, if you're going to go and do some soldering, don't go and start out with the big Weller, you know, honking soldering gun that looks like a, you know, a 1950s science fiction laser ray gun. Don't start with that. Those are good tools. I have one and it has its place. Underneath the dash where you're trying to be real careful, and that's not where you want that, because that whole thing, man, any of you who've ever worked with those, you guys know what I'm talking about. That thing gets blazing hot, and then it seemed to me like every time I was trying to do something small, everything got hot but the tip of the soldering gun where I needed the heat. That was just my thing. I recommend getting a Weller style. You know, it's very similar to this right here. You plug it into a 110 outlet, the cord plugs in, you've got a couple of tips that you can change out, a chisel tip and a pinpoint tip, and they're great. And if you practice and you know, there are a ton of really, really good instructional YouTube videos out there on how to solder, you know, how to prep, how to do things like that. Watch some videos, grab some scrap wire, buy an inexpensive Weller soldering iron, and get some practice. And you'd be surprised, honestly, with some practice and patience, how well you can pick it up. I choose soldering just because I think it's a really great way to join wires, and it's almost an art form. So, okay, enough about that. Let's talk about some other tools that I think you're going to need. Now, not necessary, but I think you'll want them. You're going to these you're going to need, whether you do crimp or solder, you're going to need some good wire strippers. And go and purchase a set of wire strippers. These are Klein tools. I don't have a part number on here that I'm aware of. Let me see here, put my eyeballs on. Klein tools. Sorry, I don't see a part number here. Anyways, I'll try to give you guys a close-up of those. That's them right there. And that's all these are, strippers and wire cutters. That's all they do, right? These or something like this. These are really cool. These are handy when you have to do multiple wires. These are auto wire strippers. And they literally, you select the gauge of wire that you want to use right here, and then you put it in the appropriate spot, and when you close the handle, the gate comes down, grabbing the wire, and the other one comes down, strips it, separates it, all in one swift motion. I've used these quite a bit, especially when I'm doing stereo installs and stuff like that. Like I mentioned earlier, for some reason stereo connectors seem to have 9,000 tiny little wires, and they all need to have a connection. So there you go. That's what I use those for. Extremely handy. Whether you go with these or you go with the autos, get a good set of strippers. You will be very happy that you did. Something else you want to get is maybe some good wire cutters or flush cutters for clipping off zip ties. Just a thought. Okay, so some of the stuff that you're going to want as well. That's it for tooling. You know, you're going to need basic tools. You know, screwdrivers and nut drivers and ratchets, stuff like that. Should be stuff you have already. If you don't have all that, well, there you go. You're going to need it to even get things apart to pull the old harness out. So anyways, if you're going to be scavenging some of the old connections off of the original harness to put on the new one, I believe there's a couple of connectors that I'm going to have to take off the old one, put on the new one. Get yourself some QD electronic cleaner. It's for connectors and stuff like that. If you're concerned about plastics and stuff, they make a plastic safe. I have that. It's over on the shelf over there. And this is really good for getting out grime and corrosion and dirt and stuff like that. The connections that I'm replacing, I won't need to use the metal connectors themselves. I need the plastic housings. I have new connectors that I'm going to be soldering onto the ends of the wires and inserting, but I do need the plastic housings. Some of the plastic housings are specific to this vehicle, and they didn't include them in the harness kit. So anyways, get some cleaner. Don't use brake clean. I know mechanics. I love brake clean. You know, if you guys watch South Main Auto, Erico, make sure that every time he shows a can of brake clean, it gets its own sound effect because it's awesome stuff. It's not awesome stuff for cleaning electrical connectors. Brake clean can actually break down the plastics and stuff. That's why I say get actual electronic cleaner. If you're not sure, get some rubbing alcohol with at least like 70% and just clean it with that, because it'll evaporate and it won't damage plastics and stuff, at least not that I've ever experienced. All right, so that's that. Some other stuff that you're gonna want. These were not included in the kit. These are ground straps. I have 3 of them here. I've got a couple more that are coming for a couple other areas. These are extremely important because these old vehicles, this is going to be from the chassis. You guys can see that braided heavy lug chassis to engine, and then this will be for the engine to cab, and then this will be for inside the cab for stuff inside. The reason why the grounds are so vitally important, this vehicle here is made of metal, and old trucks and cars, they're not heavily electronic dependent. They don't have an engine control computer. They don't have a transmission control computer. They don't have a body control computer. They don't have, various electric circuit boards and controls for windows or any of that stuff. They are very basic electrically. You have a power side and a ground side. You have a switch, and you have something that's going to do the work when you flip the switch. And that's it. That's the basics of just about everything on this vehicle. So if you have power and it's still not working and the component is not bad and burned out, it's almost always a ground. If you go on old car forums and stuff like that, and you talk to some of the people on there and some of the old mechanics and stuff, or people that have just been doing this for a while, and you get on there and you see something along the lines, you post something along the lines of, hey man, I got this old, 73 Chevy El Camino, and I've got this weird electrical thing, like the lights will flicker, and almost everyone in there will tell you, hey, have you checked your grounds? And because it's that important. And I'll show you one of the reasons why. This right here, this little light fixture housing, okay, you notice it has one wire, right? One wire, no other wires. And that's the power wire right there. So power goes in, and the reason why is because that's picking up on the camera there. That's metal. That housing is not plastic, as is the case on, newer vehicles, plastic, aluminum maybe. That's metal, okay? The socket that the bulb seats into, that's metal. Not plastic, not aluminum, not brass. It's all metal. So this thing here completes the circuit when you screw it to the cab, because the cab is made of, say it with me, metal, and it provides ground. So they run a power wire, and then ground is found when you screw this to the body or the cab, and there's your ground, and that completes the circuit from power. So you've got the battery, the switch, to the light, which is doing the work, through the light, to the ground, back to the battery. That's how they do circuitry. And so this light, your gauges, the gauges on this are ground side controlled, which is kind of a cool thing. So they have constant power, and then the ground alternates to control gauge movement. And I showed that in a video a couple videos ago when I showed you guys how I was testing the cluster, the gauge cluster that came out of this. So go back and watch that. I thought it was a really cool video, but I might be biased. So there you go. But grounds are extremely important, especially in the older electrical of these vehicles. So I bought some ground straps, good solid ground straps. Before I install them, I'll get in there with a die grinder and a wire wheel, and I will make sure that I have good bare metal contact, and then I will seal that with some, word just escaped my, there's some stuff that you put on there that'll make sure it has a good contact, and I can't think of the word of it right now, but anyways, I'll make sure it has a good ground. What is the name of that stuff? It's a nickel anti-seize, and it's made for making contact. It'll keep stuff from corroding and stuff. Anyways, bare metal, good solid contact, good tight mechanical contact, and you won't have ground issues. So I bought those, got those so that I can have that all taken care of. And then some other things that you're gonna want some P-clamps. These are plastic P-clamps, cable clamps, and things like that. If you're wondering why I'm calling them a P-clamp, if you look at the shape of them, they make the shape of a P. They fasten here, and then they make a P shape. I don't know if that's forward or backwards. It's backwards to me, so hopefully it's forward to you. So anyways, P-clamps, plastic ones. There are some P-clamps up underneath the dash when I was taking the dash harness out and getting the rest of the harness out. There's 3 of them over on the passenger side that are up underneath that hold that harness up, and they're attached to some studs about yay long with some jam nut style nuts, and one of those broke. It's plastic. So one of those broke when I was taking it out, but I've got some replacements, so it's not a big deal. I'm kind of cautious of where I put plastics in vehicles here, because we live in the desert, and we don't deal with rust and corrosion. We deal with plastic and rubber that just becomes brittle and disintegrates. So, but I think for this purpose, these will be fine. I've used these before. I really like them. So there's those. And then something else you're gonna want, I showed you guys in the kit. There are a few grommets that they do include in the kit that are pass-throughs for like the firewall and stuff like that. Just go out and buy yourself a Grommet kit. I went and bought this one. It was a Harbor Freight kit. I know, Harbor Freight. Ooh. Anyways, it's rubber grommets, and they're coming in some various sizes. And this just protects the wire that you're gonna, if you run it through a metal surface, you know, a hole in a metal firewall or someplace, you know, you need to protect the wiring so that it doesn't rub against the metal. That being said, as far as protecting the wiring, I showed you guys the sample card that they included in the Painless wiring harness, and they were advertising some stuff that they recommend you use. It's a wire loom. And this is the stuff here. I had some from another project. Want to make sure that's showing up. So this stuff is really, really good. It unrolls there, as you can see, so it curls up automatically, but you separate it. I have a tool that you can run, and it'll run the wiring harness, and it's just a loom. That's all it is, a protective loom for the wiring harness. Now, I'm not opposed to the plastic loom. In fact, I have some here in my shop that I've used for other installation jobs. It's good stuff. And if you buy the right stuff, the right plastic loom stuff, it has temperature ratings, so it's resistant to temperature and oil and stuff. But buy the right, you have to buy the good stuff. You buy the cheap stuff and whatever. I've seen that stuff melt in the sun. Excuse me, the problem with this stuff that I have found, I have had vehicles that have come into my shop that this stuff was put on the loom, you know, originally from the factory, OEM. And, you know, the vehicles, you know, let's say it was a 2006, so it was produced in 2006. I look at it and I look at this stuff and it starts crumbling. And, you know, if I'm having to do a wiring problem, diagnostic, troubleshooting or whatever, you know, I try not to damage this, but this stuff just crumbles away. It's plastic and it literally just falls apart. This stuff is a lot more durable, lasts longer, and so this is just what I chose to use. I bought this stuff. I have 25 feet in each size that I bought, and I bought 4 different sizes. I think I bought some 1/8 inch, maybe some 1/4 inch. I got some 1/2 inch and some 3/8 inch stuff, so that'll fit all the loom that I'm gonna run, just so that I've got it protected. You know, especially the wiring harness that runs down the frame. I want to make sure that I've got that nice and covered and secured, just because I'm pretty sure the guy doesn't want to pay for this to be all done again, and I want it to look right and last. So that's why I opted for this stuff. Whether you buy the stuff off of Painless or you buy this stuff, you know, from other sources, doesn't matter to me, but I highly recommend something like this. So that's that stuff there. Some other stuff you're gonna want is some heat shrink assortment. And I got 2 different types here. I've got some other types here in the shop. I've got some colored heat shrink, you know, red, blue, green, yellow, orange, I think is the 4 colors that I have. And I use that whenever I'm running, you know, color specific wires to keep the color there. But a lot of times I'll just use, you know, your standard black heat shrink. And the reason why I got these 2 different cases is this one here is a marine heat shrink. And what's the difference between this and normal heat shrink is the fact that this stuff has a glue, kind of a silicone glue that's inside of it, and as you heat it up over the wire and it constricts on the wire, it forces this goo stuff out and it seals the connection, so that you can not have to worry about moisture intrusion and stuff like that. We don't have a lot of moisture here in the area that I'm at, but it happens. And so this is really good for if you think there's gonna be any moisture whatsoever. I use this if I'm doing wire repairs and stuff inside the engine bay, and I think maybe there might be fuel or oil or something like that. It's just one more level of protection. This heat shrink tubing is fine. It just, all it does is when it constricts and shrinks down, it just shrinks against the insulation, and so it's not watertight. So anyways, pick up some of these. You know, these are just an assortment kit of various sizes and lengths, and heat shrink. It's pretty simple, but very good. I like to use heat shrink whenever I'm doing harnesses. I'll get the harness started or whatever, and then I'll put a piece of heat shrink here where the wire is, and so that will shrink down and hold that there so that I can run the wire the rest of the way. Looks really nice when it's done, nice and clean, and you know, holds it in place, and then you don't have to worry about it unraveling on you. Just something I do. Not something you have to do, but just a thought. So rubber grommets, heat shrink, some P-clamps, and you can get the metal ones. If you do get the metal ones, make sure you get the metal ones with the rubber on them. And keep in mind that, you know, like plastics in the desert here, Eventually the rubber's going to give up on you. It's going to, you know, get dry rotted or whatever, but, you know, hey, it'll last for a long time. So there you go. So there's some of that stuff. Some other stuff that you're going to want to look for. I've got some more of these coming. I love these things. These are pads for mounting zip ties. And so you put it in. It's got adhesive on the back that's a pretty good adhesive. I've never used these in engine bays because I'm not sure if it would withstand, you know, the oil and fuel and all that stuff. I typically use these like in under dashes and stuff like that, and they're really great because they provide you an anchor point for a zip tie. And so you can, you know, you don't have to go all the way through. You can put, I've used these for multiples, you know, where I've got a couple of wires that I want to separate, and so you put it in there, you know, you get it started, and then you can zip tie it to this side. It's a 4-way cross. These things are really great, and they're not that expensive. Like I said, I have some black ones coming because the black ones kind of blend in better, but there you go. Just perfect for that kind of stuff. Again, not necessary, but it's nice. It makes it to where if you want to route some wires and keep them tucked up in an area, this gives you that opportunity. Especially if you don't have like chassis clips or wire clips that are already pre-installed. So that's something there. Some other stuff that you're going to want. You're going to want some good electrical tape because you're going to have to make some, you know, wraps or whatever. If you're doing a job that has a bunch of wiring harness branches on it and you got to push them through, and you know, there's a chance that it's going to get confusing, and you're going to get all these branches pushed through the firewall, and you're going to forget what branch goes to what because maybe the harness isn't marked that well. I have some of this tape that I've used in the past for that kind of a situation, and let me grab 4 of them here so that I can demonstrate. And it's just colored electrical tape. This is, I would never use this for like an actual wrap where I would use this maybe. But for identifying wires, you know, let's say you've got 4 branches of a harness that are coming through the firewall, and you know, hey, yellow's going to be for the left-hand lights, red's going to be for the right-hand lights, blue's going to be for the fuel injector, and green's going to be for whatever else, right? So that's what that's really helpful for. Again, not a necessity, but kind of a helpful tool, you know what I mean, to have on hand, and that's not very expensive. You can pick this up. O'Reilly's and stuff, they'll have colored packs like that. Good electrical tape you're going to want. And then something else that I do recommend that you get is this stuff here. It's called Tessa tape, T-E-S-A, Tessa tape. And I'm going to give you guys a close up there. I hope that's showing up. If you can see, that's kind of a cloth style of tape, but it's not cloth tape. What this is this is actually wiring harness tape. They use this in the factories. A lot of OEMs use it. It's got good adhesive. It adheres to itself really well. And it is highly resistant to abrasion and scuffing and things like that. So what you will see this used for on harnesses that are coming from the factory is anywhere where a harness makes a bend and is potentially going to be rubbing or chafing or have abrasion, they will, you know, they'll have loom wrapped around it, but then they'll also double wrap it with this stuff just to give it another layer. And this stuff is durable. It wears a long time before it actually wears through. I've used this. I bought 6 rolls of this. I don't remember how long ago. It's been a couple of years ago. Actually, it's been longer than that. I've had this stuff for a while. I've used about a roll and a half. I think I bought 6 rolls of this off of Amazon for around 40 bucks. I think they do sell, you know, if you just want to buy 1 or 2. But I highly recommend this stuff, even if you're doing the plastic loom. You know, I've used this, and what I was using this for was on another job. And you know, you'll have this is your wiring loom, you know, or your wiring harness rather, and you'll run your loom. Well, your loom's only going to come to this point, you know what I mean? Especially if you're joining, you have a branch right here. You know, you've got a loom here and here. And so what this is really good for is you can take it and you can wrap it around to kind of seal where that loom comes together. Helps seal everything together, and it, again, looks really nice, looks sharp, professional. Highly recommend Tessa tape. So there's some tapes. And let's see what else. I do have some colored electrical tape for some stuff. This is 3M, high dollar stuff. This is if I'm gonna have to wrap something, you know, because there's some stuff that you wrap that you tend to leave there. this is what I'll use then instead of the cheap stuff. Not necessary, but very helpful. Let's see what else. There was one other thing that I want to talk about. Oh yeah, here you go. Just some organization stuff. And in the vein of marking stuff so that you can kind of keep track of it. I'm a fan of these painter's markers. They're really vibrant, bright colors, and they're paint markers. And so you can make a dot, a letter, whatever you use, and then maybe write it on a piece of paper. Hey, A is for this part of the chassis, or a harness rather, and B is for this. And then you have a corresponding colors to do that with. Sharpies are good. I've used Sharpies. But in some cases, for me at least, Sharpies are kind of some of the colors are hard to see, and maybe it's just me, my eyes are getting old. I got, 15 different pairs of glasses that I wear now. So that's why I choose these. These are really bright and they show up really well, and they last. The color stays. So there's that. What else? Some zip ties. Get yourself some zip ties, because even though there's a bunch of little zip ties that are included in the harness kit, you're going to need zip ties. Typically, just about every installation I've ever done, I've needed zip ties. So buy some zip ties. They're inexpensive. And that's about it. I know this went a little long, and hopefully it wasn't too long. Some of you guys didn't fall asleep watching, but I really hope it's helpful to you guys. If this content's good for you and you're enjoying it, let me know. Hit subscribe, thumbs up, ring the bell, all that good stuff. Let other people know if you know somebody's getting into one of these projects and you think this will help them. Let them know. If you think I need to do something better or whatever, give me a thumbs down and tell me what you want to see. So I really appreciate it. I appreciate all the subscribers that have been giving me some comments and positive feedback, and I really appreciate it. You guys take care. Bye.